I'm 29 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had my entire life figured out. I had a stable job, a comfortable apartment, and a woman I loved more than I ever thought possible. Her name was Sarah, and for almost 4 years, she was my everything. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party on a warm Saturday evening in June. I remember the exact moment I saw her. She was standing near the backyard fence, holding a glass of white wine, laughing at something someone had said. Her laugh was the first thing I noticed. It was genuine and unguarded, the kind of laugh that makes you want to know what was so funny. I walked over, introduced myself, and we talked for 3 hours straight while the party continued around us like background noise. Within 6 months, she had moved into my apartment. It felt natural, inevitable even. She was a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm downtown, sharp and ambitious, and always talking about eventually going to law school herself. I worked in logistics management for a distribution company. The work wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and I was good at it. Between our two salaries, we weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We could afford nice dinners out, weekend trips to the coast, and we never stressed about rent. We talked about marriage constantly, not in some vague, hypothetical way, but in concrete terms. We discussed venues and guest lists and what kind of ceremony we wanted. Last Christmas, we walked through the mall together and stopped at a jewelry store. She pointed at a ring in the display case, an elegant sapphire surrounded by small diamonds set in white gold. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with this soft smile, and I knew exactly what she meant. 2 days later, I went back to that store alone. I spoke with the jeweler about financing options and payment plans. I was planning to propose this Christmas, exactly 1 year after she'd shown me the ring. I had it all mapped out in my head. A quiet dinner at her favorite restaurant, a walk through the park afterward, and then I'd get down on one knee near the fountain where we'd had our first real date. That future died 3 weeks ago at my cousin Marcus's engagement party. The week leading up to the party, Sarah had been acting strange, distant, snippy. She'd pick fights over small things and then retreat into silence for hours. I chalked it up to work stress. She'd mentioned that her boss was being difficult about some case deadlines, and she'd been staying late at the office 3 or 4 nights that week. I believed her completely. Why wouldn't I? In 4 years, she'd never given me a reason to doubt her. One of those nights, I offered to bring her dinner. I said I'd pick up Thai food from the place she liked and drop it off at her office so she wouldn't have to eat alone. She told me no, that she'd just grab something from the deli downstairs. She said she'd be home late and I shouldn't wait up. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Now, looking back, I can see how obvious the signs were. But when you trust someone completely, you don't look for cracks. You assume the foundation is solid. Marcus's party was on a Saturday evening. He and his fiancée, Jennifer, had bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, the kind with a professionally landscaped yard and a patio made for entertaining. There were about 40 people there when we arrived around 7 p.m. Music played from outdoor speakers, and guests clustered in small groups around the patio and living room, holding drinks and laughing and celebrating the upcoming wedding. Sarah seemed tense from the moment we walked in. She poured herself a glass of wine almost immediately and barely spoke to me for the first hour. I tried to brush it off. I told myself she was just tired, that she'd loosen up as the night went on. I was standing near the kitchen island with Marcus and a few of my friends, talking about nothing important, when Sarah walked up to us. She had a drink in her hand, her third or fourth of the night, and her face was flushed with alcohol. Her expression was hard in a way I didn't recognize. "Can we talk?" she said. But her tone wasn't quiet or private. It was loud enough that Marcus stopped mid-sentence and turned to look at her. A few nearby conversations paused. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What's up?" "I'm serious. We need to talk about us." I glanced around. People were starting to stare. Jennifer was watching from across the room with a concerned expression, and I could feel the attention of the room slowly shifting toward us. "Okay," I said, "let's go outside and—" "No," she cut me off, her voice rising. "I'm tired of pretending. You know what? I don't think this is going to work." My stomach dropped. The music suddenly felt too loud, and the room seemed to shrink around us. I was acutely aware of every single person within earshot. "Sarah," I said, quietly, "this isn't the place." She ignored me. Her eyes were glassy from the wine, but there was something cruel in them, something I'd never seen before. "You could never be a good husband," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm not going to marry you." The room went completely silent. 40 people, all staring at us. I could feel my face go hot with humiliation, my hands clenching involuntarily at my sides. But I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't give her the reaction she seemed to be looking for. I just looked at her for a long moment, trying to understand who this person was. She stared back at me with hard, almost daring eyes, like she was waiting for me to explode, to give her ammunition. I didn't say a single word. I turned around, grabbed my jacket from the chair by the front door, and walked out into the night. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "What just happened?" And then the murmur of voices starting up again, quieter now, gossipy and uncomfortable. The drive home was silent. No music, no phone calls, just the hum of the engine and the sound of my own breathing. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I kept gripping it harder to make them stop. I kept replaying the scene in my head, trying to understand what I'd missed, what I'd done wrong, why the woman I loved had just destroyed me in front of everyone I knew. When I got back to our apartment, I didn't turn on any lights. I sat on the couch in the darkness, the streetlight outside casting long shadows across the wall. I sat there for maybe an hour, maybe longer, just staring at nothing. Then my phone buzzed. A text message from Rachel, one of Sarah's close friends from college. "Do you even know what happened after you left?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back a single word. "What?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Can I call you?" "Yeah." My phone rang 5 seconds later.
"Hey," Rachel said when I answered. Her voice sounded strained and raw, like she'd been crying recently or was about to start. In the background, I could still hear the sounds of the party. Muffled music, distant laughter, glasses clinking. The celebration was still going on without me. "Hey," I managed. "I don't even know how to say this," she said, "but you need to know. After you left, Sarah completely broke down. She started crying and saying she didn't mean it, that she was scared, that she'd made a mistake. People were trying to comfort her, and honestly, she was making herself look like the victim." I closed my eyes. Of course she was. Of course she'd twisted to make herself sympathetic. "But that's not the worst part," Rachel continued. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. There was hesitation in her voice, the kind that comes before delivering news you know will hurt. "What's the worst part?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. I heard her take a breath. "Marcus's brother, Jake, was there. You know Jake, right?" I did know Jake. He was Marcus's younger brother, maybe 26 years old. He worked in finance at some investment firm and never let anyone forget it. Always dressed in expensive clothes, always talking a little too loudly about his portfolio returns and his gym routine. I'd never liked him much, but he was Marcus's family, so I'd tolerated him at gatherings. "Yeah," I said, "I know him." "Sarah's been seeing him for at least 2 months. The floor disappeared beneath me. The room tilted sideways, and I had to grip the arm of the couch to steady myself. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" "I didn't know until tonight. I swear to God, I had no idea." Rachel's voice cracked. "After you left, Jake came up to Sarah and tried to comfort her. He put his arm around her and she leaned into him. Not like a friend comforting a friend, but like they were together, like it was the most natural thing in the world." I couldn't speak. My brain was trying to process the words, but they felt surreal, like something from a movie about someone else's life. And then I overheard him say something to her. He said, "You said you were going to end it clean. This wasn't the plan." The words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't the plan. They'd had a plan. They'd discussed how to end my relationship, how to discard me, and Sarah had botched it by making a drunken scene instead of executing their strategy cleanly. "That's when I put it together," Rachel said. "I confronted her in the bathroom about 20 minutes ago. She admitted everything." I still couldn't find words. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She said it started at some work event Jake was at back in September. They ran into each other, started talking, and then it just happened. That's exactly what she said, like it was some kind of accident. But 2 months isn't an accident. 2 months is a choice she made over and over again. 2 months. I thought about September. I tried to remember what we'd been doing then. We'd gone apple picking one weekend. We'd talked about getting a dog. I'd mentioned maybe looking at houses in the spring. And the whole time she'd been sleeping with Jake behind my back. "Is she still there?" I finally managed to ask. "Yeah, she's still at the party, acting like she's the victim. A few people are comforting her, the ones who don't know what actually happened. But honestly, most people look uncomfortable. Jennifer is pissed. I think she wants Sarah to leave." "Thanks for telling me," I said, and my voice cracked slightly on the last word. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." We hung up and I sat there in the dark for another hour. The apartment was completely silent, except for the occasional sound of a car passing on the street outside. I kept running through the last 2 months in my head, re-examining every memory, every conversation, every night she said she was working late. How many of those nights had she actually been with him? How many times had she come home to me after being with him, kissed me, slept next to me in our bed? The thought made me physically nauseous. And then, somewhere around midnight, something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt began to crystallize into something colder, harder. I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started thinking clearly for the first time all night.
I opened my laptop and logged into our shared bank account. It was an account we'd set up about 2 years ago for rent and utilities. We both contributed a set amount each month, and it was supposed to make managing household expenses easier. The account had both our names on it, and we both had full access. I started scrolling through the transaction history going back 3 months. At first, everything looked normal. Rent payments, electric bill, internet, groceries from the supermarket down the street. Normal, mundane expenses from a normal, mundane life. Then I noticed something. A charge from a restaurant called Provisions. I didn't recognize the name, so I searched for it. It was an upscale place downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and a dress code, and entrees that cost more than most people's grocery bills. I'd never been there. Sarah had never mentioned it. The charge was $180. The date was early September, right around when Rachel said the affair began. I kept scrolling. Another charge from Provisions, 3 weeks later, $210. Then, about 4 weeks ago, a charge that made my stomach turn. $340 from a boutique hotel 15 minutes from our apartment. I remembered that weekend clearly. Sarah had told me she was at a work conference in Chicago. She'd said her firm was sending her to some continuing education seminar, and she'd be gone from Friday through Sunday. She'd never gone to Chicago. She'd been 15 minutes away, in a hotel room, with Jake. I started taking screenshots. Every transaction that didn't make sense, every restaurant I'd never heard of, every charge that corresponded with a night she'd claimed to be working late. There were 11 charges in total, 11 separate occasions over 2 months where she'd used our shared money I'd contributed to fund her affair. The evidence was right there in front of me, documented in clean rows of dates and dollar amounts and merchant names. Each line was a lie. Each charge was a betrayal. I saved all the screenshots to a folder on my desktop. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew I wanted proof. I wanted documentation. I wanted to be able to show her exactly what I'd found if she tried to deny anything or minimize what she'd done. I didn't sleep that night.
I sat on the couch with my laptop open, scrolling through the bank statements again and again, thinking about every lie she'd told me. Every time she said she was working late, every time she'd been too tired to go out with me on weekends, every time she'd picked a fight over something trivial. Now I understood those fights. They weren't about dishes in the sink or whose turn it was to take out the trash. They were about guilt. She was looking for reasons to justify what she was doing, looking for flaws in me that would make her betrayal feel acceptable. At around 6 in the morning, the sky just starting to lighten outside the window, I heard a key in the front door. The door opened slowly, quietly, like someone trying not to make noise. Sarah stepped inside. She was still wearing the same dress from the party, now wrinkled and disheveled. Her makeup was smudged under her eyes and her hair was a mess. She looked exhausted and fragile and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. She froze when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, cold coffee at my elbow, watching her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "We need to talk."
Sarah dropped her purse on the counter and crossed her arms defensively. Even now, even caught, her first instinct was to protect herself. I watched her eyes dart to the laptop screen, trying to see what I was looking at, trying to assess how much I knew. "I know I messed up last night," she said. Her voice was hoarse, probably from crying. "I was drunk and I didn't mean what I said. I was just stressed and everything came out wrong. Can we please just talk about this like adults?" She was already spinning the narrative, already trying to reduce what had happened to a simple misunderstanding, a drunken mistake that could be apologized away with the right words. I didn't let her finish. "How long have you been sleeping with Jake?" The color drained from her face. It happened instantly, like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it, might try to gaslight me into questioning what I knew. "What?" she managed. "Don't lie to me." My voice was calm, almost eerily so. I didn't recognize it as my own. "Rachel told me everything, and I found the bank statements." I turned the laptop around so she could see the screen. I'd arranged the screenshots in chronological order, each suspicious charge highlighted in yellow. The restaurants, the hotel, the pattern of expenses that painted a clear picture of a 2-month affair funded partially by money I'd contributed to our share of account. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment. I watched her face cycle through emotions. Shock, then fear, then something that looked almost like relief, the relief of someone who no longer has to maintain a lie. Her shoulders sagged. "It just happened," she said quietly. "It wasn't planned." 2 months isn't just happened, Sarah. 2 months is a relationship. 2 months is a choice you made every single day. She started crying then. Tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through what remained of her makeup. She looked small and broken, and some part of me, some stupid, loyal part that still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with, wanted to comfort her. But I didn't move. "I was confused," she said through the tears. "You and I have been together so long, and I started wondering if this was really what I wanted. Everything felt so routine, so predictable. Jake made me feel, I don't know, excited again, like things weren't so settled. So you humiliated me in front of 40 people because you were bored? That's not fair." "No." I stood up from the table. My legs felt stiff from sitting all night, but my voice was steady. "What's not fair is that I spent 4 years building a life with someone who was shopping for upgrades behind my back. What's not fair is that I was looking at financing options for an engagement ring while you were spending our shared money on hotel rooms with my cousin's brother." She flinched at that. The mention of the ring seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. "You were going to propose?" "This Christmas. I had it all planned out."
More tears. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. A year ago, 6 months ago, even a week ago, I would have crossed the room and held her. I would have told her it was okay, that we'd figure it out together, that I loved her and we could work through anything. But that person was gone. She'd killed him last night at Marcus's party. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. Can we please just talk about this? Can we try to work through it?" "There's nothing to talk about." I picked up my cold coffee and poured it down the sink. "I want you out of the apartment by the end of the week." She looked up, her face wet and red. "This is my place too." "The lease is in my name. You moved in after I'd already been here a year. Check the paperwork if you don't believe me." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. In 4 years, she'd never seen this side of me, the cold, practical side that could compartmentalize emotion and focus on logistics. I hadn't known this side of me existed either, not until she'd forced me to find it. "You're really going to throw me out? You threw us away the second you got into bed with Jake. I'm just making it official." She left the kitchen without another word. I heard the bedroom door slam shut, and then I heard her crying through the wall, loud, heaving sobs that went on for what felt like hours. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel much of anything. Sarah moved out 4 days later. Those 4 days were some of the strangest of my life. We existed in the same apartment like ghosts, occupying separate spaces, speaking only when absolutely necessary. She slept in the bedroom, I slept on the couch. We passed each other in the hallway without making eye contact. She tried to take some furniture when she left, the coffee table, a bookshelf, even the good blender that I'd bought before we even met. I stopped her each time, producing receipts I'd saved in a folder on my computer. She backed down without much fight. I think she knew she didn't have any moral ground to stand on. The whole moving process was cold and mechanical. Her parents came with a U-Haul on Saturday morning. Her father wouldn't look at me, and I wondered what version of events Sarah had told them. Her mother gave me this pitying look, like I was the one who'd done something wrong, like I was the villain in whatever story Sarah had constructed to protect her own self-image. I didn't bother explaining anything to them. It wasn't worth the energy. After they left, I stood in the middle of my apartment and looked around at the empty spaces where her things had been, the shelf where she'd kept her books, the corner where her reading chair used to sit, the bathroom counter now clear of her products. It felt strange, but it also felt right. 2 days after Sarah moved out, I got a text from Jake. I stared at his name on my phone screen for a long moment before opening the message. It was 5 paragraphs long, a carefully crafted apology full of phrases that sounded like they'd been workshopped with a therapist or pulled from some self-help article about taking accountability. He said he never meant for things to go this far. He said he took full responsibility for his actions. He said he respected me too much to let this ruin my relationship with Marcus. He said he hoped that eventually, with time, we could move past this and maybe even be cordial at family gatherings. I read the whole thing once. Then I deleted it and blocked his number. There was nothing he could say that would make any difference. An apology doesn't undo betrayal. Words don't rebuild trust. He'd made his choice when he pursued a relationship with my girlfriend, and now he had to live with the consequences of that choice. One of those consequences was that I would never speak to him again. 2 days after that, Marcus called me. "I heard what happened," he said. His voice was careful, measured. "Jake told me his side of things, but I wanted to hear yours." So I told him everything: the public humiliation at his party, Rachel's phone call, the affair, the bank statements showing restaurant charges and hotel rooms, the 2 months of lies, the confrontation in my kitchen, and the cold, mechanical process of removing Sarah from my life. Marcus listened without interrupting. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, taking it all in. When he finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry, man," he finally said. "I had no idea. Jake's my brother, but what he did was beyond messed up. I'm not going to make excuses for him." I appreciate that. For what it's worth, Jennifer already uninvited Sarah from the wedding. She was supposed to be a bridesmaid, but that's obviously not happening now. He paused. And I'm keeping Jake on a very short leash. He's not in the wedding party anymore. Jennifer wanted him completely uninvited, but he's still my brother, so he can come to the ceremony. That's it. No reception. It gave me some small measure of satisfaction, knowing that there were consequences for both of them, but it didn't fix anything. Nothing could fix the betrayal. Nothing could give me back the 4 years I'd invested in a relationship that had been rotting from the inside without my knowledge. All I could do was move forward.
About 2 weeks after Sarah moved out, I got a message from her on Instagram. The notification popped up on my phone while I was at work, and I stared at it for a long moment before deciding whether to open it. Her profile picture was still the same one from when we were together, a photo of her smiling at some beach, looking happy and carefree, looking like the woman I thought I knew. I opened the message. It was long and rambling, the kind of message someone writes at 2 in the morning when they can't sleep and their thoughts are spiraling. She said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she hadn't realized what she had until it was gone. She said Jake had turned out to be different than she thought, that she'd been foolish and impulsive, that what we'd had together was real and she'd thrown it away for nothing. She wanted to meet up and talk. She said she understood if I was angry, but she needed me to know how sorry she was. She said she still loved me. She said she'd do anything to make things right. I didn't finish reading the message. I blocked her on Instagram, then Facebook, then her email for good measure. Whatever she was feeling, whatever regrets she had, they weren't my problem anymore. She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with it. But here's where the story gets interesting. About a week after I blocked her, a mutual friend named Tyler reached out to me. Tyler had known both of us since college, and he'd stayed neutral during the breakup, not taking sides. But he had information he thought I should hear. Apparently, Jake had been seeing someone else the entire time he was with Sarah. Her name was Amanda. She worked at his firm, in a different department, and they'd been together for almost a year, long before Jake started pursuing Sarah. Sarah was never meant to be a real relationship. She was a side piece, a distraction, something exciting and forbidden that made Jake feel powerful. Sarah found out about Amanda when she saw texts on Jake's phone. She confronted him, expecting him to choose her, expecting him to say that what they had was special and real. Instead, he told her she was just a fling. He said he'd never intended for it to be serious. He said it was just fun, something to pass the time. He said Amanda was his actual girlfriend and always had been. Tyler told me that Sarah was devastated. She showed up at his apartment at 10 o'clock at night crying, asking him what she should do. She'd destroyed her 4-year relationship for a man who'd never seen her as anything more than entertainment. And then, to make things even worse, she got fired from her job the same week. Apparently, she'd been falling apart at work for weeks, showing up late, missing deadlines, making careless mistakes. She'd gotten into a screaming argument with her boss over some filing error right in the middle of the office in front of other paralegals and attorneys. Her boss had been lenient with her for a while, making allowances because of personal stress, but the public outburst was the final straw. They let her go that Friday. Tyler said she'd been calling around to mutual friends, trying to get someone, anyone, to convince me to take her back. No one would help her. A few people told her explicitly that what she'd done was unforgivable, that she'd made her bed and now she had to lie in it. That's why she'd sent me the Instagram message, not because she'd had some genuine realization about what she'd lost, not because she truly regretted hurting me, but because her backup plan had imploded, and she was desperate and alone and looking for any port in the storm. I felt nothing when Tyler told me all of this. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sense of justice being served. Just a hollow kind of acknowledgement that things had worked out the way they were supposed to. She'd chosen Jake over me, and Jake had discarded her like she meant nothing. There was a certain poetry to it, I suppose. It's been 3 weeks since that night at Marcus's party. I'm still processing everything that happened, still finding moments where the anger or hurt bubbles up unexpectedly. But mostly, I feel lighter. The apartment is quieter now, emptier, but it's mine again. I've reclaimed every corner of it.
I rearranged the furniture the weekend after she left, moved the couch to the other wall, shifted the dining table closer to the window. I threw out everything that reminded me of her. Photos, gifts, the little decorative objects she'd accumulated over the years. I donated the books she'd left behind without even looking at the titles. I bought new sheets for the bed, a simple gray set that she never would have picked, and I sleep better now than I have in months. I've started going to the gym in the mornings before work, not to get revenge fit, not to make her jealous, just for myself, just to have something that's mine, a routine that belongs only to me. I've been reading more too, picking up books I'd been meaning to finish for years, small things that make me feel like I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece. Marcus and I are still close. His wedding is in 2 months, and I'm still in the wedding party as a groomsman. He held firm on keeping Jake out of the reception. Apparently, Jake and Sarah tried to make things work for about a week after she found out about Amanda, some desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. It imploded almost immediately. Jake blocked her number, and she showed up at his apartment once, crying and demanding to talk. He threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents. They live about an hour outside the city, in the same house where she grew up. She's unemployed and apparently spending most of her time in her childhood bedroom. Rachel told me she's been posting vague, sad quotes on social media, the kind that are clearly about me but never mention me by name. Inspirational nonsense about learning from mistakes and becoming stronger through pain. I haven't seen any of them because I blocked her everywhere, but Rachel checks in on me sometimes and shares updates. Rachel feels guilty for not noticing the affair sooner. I told her it wasn't her fault. Sarah was careful. She covered her tracks well. If Rachel had known, she would have told me immediately. I'm grateful she told me the truth when she did find out. That phone call the night of the party was one of the hardest things I've ever had to hear, but it was also a mercy. Better to know than to keep living a lie. I'm not dating anyone right now. I'm not ready, and I'm not looking. But I'm also not bitter. I don't hate Sarah, and I don't hate Jake. Hating them would require energy that I'd rather spend on myself. They have to live with being the kind of people who do what they did, and that's punishment enough. Someone asked me recently if I ever confronted Jake directly. I didn't. He's not worth my energy. Anything I said to him would have been for my own ego, and I've got better things to do than feed my ego with a confrontation that would change nothing. Someone else asked if I ever got a real apology from Sarah. The answer is no. The Instagram message wasn't an apology. It was desperation. There's a difference. And as for the ring, the elegant sapphire one she'd pointed out at the mall last Christmas, I never bought it. I was planning to propose this Christmas, exactly 1 year after she'd shown it to me. I had the financing arranged, the proposal planned, the whole future mapped out in my head. I think about that sometimes, how close I came to marrying someone who was lying to me, how easily I could have proposed before discovering the truth, could have been bound to her legally and financially when everything fell apart. Sometimes I think about that moment at Marcus's party when she yelled at me in front of everyone. At the time, it felt like the worst moment of my life. The humiliation was total and absolute. I could feel 40 pairs of eyes on me, could hear the whispers starting before I'd even reached the door. But now I realize that moment was a gift. She showed me exactly who she was. She stripped away the mask she'd been wearing for months and revealed the person underneath. And because she did it so publicly, so undeniably, I was able to walk away with complete certainty that I was making the right choice. If she'd been smarter, she would have ended things quietly. She would have given me some excuse about needing space or growing apart or wanting different things. She would have let me down gently, and I might have spent months wondering what I'd done wrong, trying to win her back, hoping we could fix things. Instead, she got drunk and cruel and showed me exactly who she was, and I got to walk away before I was legally tied to her forever. I got to walk away with my dignity intact, with proof of her betrayal saved on my laptop, with the knowledge that I'd done nothing wrong. I got to walk away free. That's the gift she gave me that night, even though she didn't mean to. And I'm grateful for it.
So that's my story. 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was falling apart. I thought that moment at the party, standing there while the woman I loved told me I'd never be a good husband, was the lowest point I'd ever reach. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually redirections. Sometimes the universe has to break something to show you it was already broken. And sometimes the person you thought was your future is actually just a lesson you had to learn the hard way. If you're going through something similar right now, if you're dealing with betrayal or heartbreak or the gut-wrenching realization that someone you trusted was never who you thought they were, I want you to know something. It gets better. Not immediately, not easily, but it does. You will survive this. You will rebuild. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and realize it was the beginning of something better, not the end of everything good. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been through something like this? How did you find the strength to walk away? Or maybe you're in the middle of it right now and just need someone to tell you that you're not alone. Drop a comment, share your story. Let's talk. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next upload. Your support means everything. It helps this community grow and helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve better, and sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do.